name is Stephanie Carroll and I am author of historical novel A White Room. Today I'm going to be reviewing a book that I think is a must-have for any writer who wants to get their material published professionally. It's called Formatting and Submitting Your Manuscript by Chuck Sambucino and the editors of Writer's Digest Books. It's in its third edition when I bought it, but it's probably in a more recent edition now. That's what it looks like. It's kind of big. There we go. Full-size view of the book. Now this book isn't a real reading book. It's more of a reference. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's in it and why it is so great to have. It's got sample articles and book query letters, nonfiction book proposals and novel synopses. Exclusive tips from leading agents and editors, expanded and updated information on electronic submissions, invaluable tips for query research and platform building, and genre-specific guidelines for children's writers, screenwriters, poets, essayists, and others. Basically, when you get to that point where you're ready to start submitting your work to magazines, newspapers, agents, editors, publishers, whatever, you come to this book, you look up your stuff in the table of contents, and you flip to it. The next thing you know, you have an example of a manuscript page for a short story. And it tells you everything you need to do to make it look professional and appropriate. It tells you where to put headings, what size they need to be, what type they should be, what information you should include when you put your name. Where do you put your name? Do you put your name as by blah blah blah, or do you put it at the top? Do you do both? This book tells you. It tells you where to put page numbers. It tells you how to do everything you could need to do. Query letters. And these things, you might be thinking, I don't need to format it. Who cares? They'll know what I'm doing. No. If you have it formatted properly, it makes you look like a professional. It makes it look like you know what you're doing, which 100% automatically gives your work like 20% more credibility. Basically, I had an editor tell me I had formatted my book wrong. And an editor explained to me that whenever anybody gets that and they see it all formatted wrong, they automatically think slush pile. This person doesn't know how to format their work. There's no way they're going to be good at all. So your poor formatting might actually lead to somebody throwing your work out or discrediting it before they read it. And unless you have absolute gold, if somebody discredits your work before they read it, they assume it's going to be bad, it's going to look worse when they're reading it than what it is. So yeah, it's important to format your work properly. The table of contents has just tons of stuff. I can't even read it all to you because it would take way too long. But it's got information for nonfiction. Articles is chapter 1. Chapter 2 is nonfiction books. Chapter 3 is short and specialized pieces. Then we get into fiction. Chapter 4 is short stories. Chapter 5 is novels. Chapter 6 is genre novels. So it tells you specifics for romance, mystery, science fiction, and horror. Chapter 7 is comics and graphic novels. Part 3 is children's writing. Chapter 8 is picture books. Chapter 9 is middle grade and young adult. Chapter 10 is children's magazines. Part 4 is scripts. So we're getting into screenwriting. Chapter 11 is screenplays. Chapter 12 is television scripts. Chapter 13 is audio and video scripts. Yeah, there's formatting for that. Chapter 14 is play scripts. Part 5 is verse. Chapter 15 is poetry. And then they have an appendix, which includes keeping track of your submissions, keeping track of your contacts, tracking your income and expenses, and forms, including permissions, release forms, consent of parent of guardian, and letter of agreement. That's a lot of information, and it's really, like I said, important to know how to format your book to the T. But in addition to having formatting, they give you examples of good and bad, and they give you actual, stuff to read about what to do editors' comments and opinions, and do's and don'ts. So here is chapter 1, which is for articles. As you can see, there's writing. So it's not just example after example, which for me, example after example always drives me crazy because sometimes the examples don't have what you're dealing with. So you have a paragraph just talking about, well, not a paragraph, several paragraphs talking about the things that you need for articles. Then it goes into query letter submission tips, formatting specs, then other do's and don'ts. And then we get into the examples. Example article. That's kind of how every chapter is set up. I'm going to read the back of the book for you because, let's face it, that's what we all do when we're considering a book. So here's what it says. Formatting and submitting your manuscript, 3rd edition, gives you all the information you need to craft a winning submission. Fully updated, this comprehensive resource now features more than 100 sample letters and manuscript pages, expanded instruction of electronic submissions, updated formatting and submitting guidelines, and new insider tips from top agents and editors. With strong and weak sample query letters, novel synopses, articles, nonfiction book proposals, manuscript pages, scripts, and more, you'll see exactly what works and what doesn't work. Plus, each sample page features individual callouts to clearly identify and explain critical elements so that you don't miss a thing. With this all-encompassing guide, you'll discover everything you need to make your work look professional, polished, and publishable. So, in the callouts that they're talking about, you can see on this example, they have a little explanation with an arrow. Those are little comments pointing out specific things. So, this top one has an arrow, and it says, the title is at the top, centered, bold, and italicized. Now, it's pointing it out. That's not where it tells you to do that. It tells you to do that in the actual text. Let's see if I can find a... the callouts really help me when it comes to the don't do this one, because it'll point out things that people do that you're not supposed to do. I don't see it there. I usually look at the novel section. I'm not used to the other sections. This is table of contents, blah, blah, blah. And you know what I love, specifically what I really liked about the novel section, which is what I do, is that it doesn't just tell you, and this is with all the sections, but like I said, I look at the novel section. It doesn't just tell you, okay, how do you format your manuscript? All right, we're done. It doesn't do that. It tells you how to format memoirs, the entire novel package, which by telling you how to format it explains what's in the novel package, the query letter, the electronic query letter, the cover letter. Yeah, you gotta have a cover letter too. The electronic cover letter, the cover page, synopsis, the short synopsis versus the long synopsis. Believe it or not, I've had agents ask for sometimes the short synopsis and sometimes the long synopsis. So it's good to have both. Electronic synopses, the differences. The outline. You think you know how to format an outline? You probably don't. I didn't. No. It's much different than what you think. It's not even really an outline. I mean, it's, well, you'll see when you buy the book. Electronic outline, author biography, endorsements page, the novel manuscript. See, I just listed all that stuff and we are just now getting to the actual manuscript. That's something to think about. Specific manuscript pages, electronic manuscript, cover letter, title page, reply postcard. What's a reply postcard, you ask? I'll tell you in a minute. Acknowledgements page, table of contents, dedication page, epigraph, and foreword, and preface. All of that stuff is needed. You need to know how to format all that stuff for a novel. That's a lot of stuff, and it's all in here. Let's go to the reply postcard to tell you what that is, because I forgot. I've read this before, so I know what it is, but that's why it's reference. You look back for things. I think the reply postcard is something that basically you send to an agent or a publisher that says, yeah, did you get my manuscript? If you're a bit worried about whether your novel actually makes it to the publisher, enclose a reply postcard to be signed by the editor or someone on the staff and sent back to you. So it's a little card that they sign and send back that says, I received your manuscript. Because sometimes they won't respond, and you don't know if they got it or not, and you're like, freaking out. So that's helpful. So that is my very lengthy and silly description of formatting and submitting your manuscript. Again, I really, really highly recommend this book. Everybody should have a copy. It's one of those things that is just, it's like a Bible for writers. You have to have it if you're gonna look professional, if you're gonna know what you're doing. And it's also great, especially for people who are self-publishing, because you want your stuff to look professional, and for trying to figure out everything that you're gonna need in a novel. Like, you might not have thought about the acknowledgments page and the dedication page. You might not have thought that those are different pages. You might not have thought about the epigraph versus the preface. What's the difference? You know, these are all things that are important to know as a writer and important to have formatted correctly. So go out and buy Formatting and Submitting Your Manuscript by Chuck Sambucino and the editors of Writer's Digest Books. Thank you for watching. I post new vlogs every Saturday.